As a checkered flag waved in Abu Dhabi, Max Verstappen capped what has statistically been the best ever driver performance over an entire season. Behind him, though, came a selection of cars that have underdelivered, constantly stumbled, and at times failed as they've attempted to close the gap to Verstappen. In the end, every attempt was futile, but it didn't mean there was nothing on offer for the rest of the grid in Abu Dhabi. There were places in the Drivers' Championship up for grabs, but most importantly was a coveted second place in the Constructors' Championship. Today, I'll examine Ferrari and Mercedes' attempts to win, or in some cases lose, that second spot in Abu Dhabi. Toto Wolff has often insisted that second place in the Constructors' Championships means nothing to him. He is, of course, only in it to win it. His message to a struggling Lewis Hamilton over the team radio, trying to encourage him by twisting the truth and telling the seven-time world champion he was the quickest on track, were all the evidence we needed to know that he cared deeply about that second spot. There is always a discussion over what is more important, more wind tunnel time and CFD testing time, which comes from finishing third, or the extra $10 million in prize money that comes from finishing second. The equation is far more complex than that, though. Every team member has bonuses in their contracts for finishing higher in the Constructors' Championship. There will also be extra money paid out by sponsors for a better final position as well. Then there is team morale, competitive spirit, and the prestige that comes from saying, "I helped make the second fastest race car in the world." So while, for competitive reasons, it is arguably better to finish lower in the Constructors' Championship, everyone is always fighting to finish as high as possible. Though, after watching Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz at the Yas Marina circuit this weekend, you might have believed that it was better to finish in third rather than second. On a weekend where Mercedes' main man needed to be at his sparkling best, he was as flat as he has been at any point in the past 2 years. Carlos Sainz had only missed the points twice all season before the 22nd and final round of the season, but looked nothing like he did in Singapore when he converted pole to a race win for the only non-Red Bull victory of the year. Ferrari ended the 2023 season with its 9th podium of the year. It came courtesy of Charles Leclerc, whose second-place finish at the Yas Marina circuit was never in doubt. It was everything he could have possibly done to secure Ferrari that second-place spot, as a race win was never on the cards. Ferrari said in their post-race debrief, "Ferrari has demonstrated clear signs of progress in the second half of the season, establishing itself as the second-best team, as can be seen from its tally of 215 points since the summer break." That may be true, and considering how Mercedes have finished the season, many will believe that Ferrari are the best hope at providing competition to Verstappen in 2024. But being the second-best team proved to not be good enough in the end. The problem wasn't with Charles Leclerc, the team's not-so-secret number one driver, but with Carlos Sainz, who has been by far the more consistent performer this year. Sainz qualified a lowly 16th, but given Ferrari's form in recent races, surely an 8th-place finish should have been possible for him. But as the race came to a close, Sainz was running only one place higher than he started, when a suspected power unit problem forced him to retire. What went wrong with his race up to that point? With the soft tyre compound too fragile to take any distance at Yas Marina, most drivers favoured the medium rubber to start on, to minimise the risk of losing places on the long straights at the start. Ferrari were content to bide their time with Sainz, however, and start him on hard. This appeared to be paying off as the drivers ahead of him started to pit, and by lap 18, he was up to third. Though Yuki Tsunoda led the race for a while on the same strategy as Sainz, so perhaps we shouldn't read too much into that. Despite being third, Sainz was losing too much time. He'd been less happy with his car's balance than his teammate all weekend. He crashed in practice and was eliminated in Q1. During the race, running in the turbulence of other cars exasperated their tyre degradation, a problem Ferrari has grappled with all season. On lap 18, Sainz was almost 2.5 seconds slower than George Russell, who had swapped his medium compound tyres for a fresh set of hards. In order to get Sainz to the end of the race with only a single further pit stop, he would have had to switch to mediums, and he was nowhere near close enough to the end of the race for that to be an option. That left Ferrari with only one course of action, as team principal Frédéric Vasseur explained. "When you have to pit on lap 20, you have no other option but to put a second set of hards on," he said. "Because if you put on mediums, you have to pit lap 30. As the rules require drivers to use two different tyre compounds, Sainz was in the same position Oscar Piastri found himself in Las Vegas a week earlier. He had to make a final second pit stop for a different compound. Ferrari were left hoping some kind of neutralization in the running order would play into their hands. The option was to put hards, then hards, and to expect that we could have a safety car or a red flag, said Vasseur. No safety car came though. With Formula One cars as reliable as they are now, accidents due to mechanical failure are basically non-existent anymore. Late race crashes caused by attempted overtakes are few and far between as well, so Ferrari were really grasping at straws with this strategy. At the end of the day, the strategy was terrible, but it was perhaps the best of a very bad set of options Ferrari had. The root cause of Ferrari's problem was that Sainz wasn't able to get as far into the race as they needed him to be before his lap times dropped off. He changed tyres for the first time on lap 20, but Ferrari was hoping to reach lap 35 or something like this, to do the reverse than the others. The others, they did 15-20 laps with the medium and then 40 laps with the hard. The target was to have 40 laps with the hard to have a part of the race in clean air and try to compensate part of the deficit, Vasseur said. A three-stop strategy with multiple sets of mediums used was perhaps the other option, but Sainz's qualifying showed he didn't have the pace in Abu Dhabi to offset the time lost in pit stops. While disappointing to miss out, Vasseur reasoned that missed opportunities through the year are what ultimately cost the Scuderia, and not the Abu Dhabi result. We started on the wrong foot with Bahrain, that when we had to stop when we were P3, and we get the penalty for the second race, Vasseur explained. It meant that for Charles, it was almost 25 points of penalty after 2 events, plus the points that we were giving to the others. The 2 Mercedes were behind us. But it's not only this one. You can do the list. Trust me, I did the list a couple of times. While Sainz failed to grasp second place for Ferrari in Abu Dhabi, Leclerc's 6 races without points in 2023 are just as culpable. At the end of it all, the 2 drivers finished just 6 points apart from each other in the Drivers' Championship, and any number of missed moments for either driver could have provided the 3 points the team needed to best Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship. Charles Leclerc's heroics of letting Perez pass late in the race in an attempt to get him 5 seconds ahead of George Russell to drop the Brit to 4th place in the race classification and deny Mercedes the points needed for 2nd in the Constructors' Championship were commended. But Fred Vasseur believed that Leclerc should have done more. He told Sky Sports F1, "Yeah, it was Charles. Could have been a bit more aggressive and tried to slow down Russell." There was the possibility for Leclerc to slow right down to back up George Russell as he finished more than 5 seconds behind Checo, stopping the Mexican driver from being demoted behind Russell after his 5-second penalty was applied. It's a tactic that Lewis Hamilton used in 2016 on Nico Rosberg in Abu Dhabi to try and stop his teammate winning the Drivers' Championship that season. Sergio Perez pulled a similar move in 2021 at Abu Dhabi as well to try and help Max catch Lewis for the race and championship win. The commentary team applauded Leclerc for not pulling the handbrake on George Russell to try and secure his team 2nd in the Constructors' Championship. Toto Wolff was also unsurprisingly happy that the Ferrari driver didn't try that move either. At the end, he could have pulled the handbrake on in the last sector and he didn't. I think that shows the character of a driver. While it was eventually a victory for the Mercedes team, they didn't make it easy for themselves. While George Russell looked strong all weekend before finishing in 3rd place, Lewis Hamilton had a miserable time. In Saturday's qualifying session, he was knocked out in Q2. From 11th on the grid though, there was still plenty of opportunity for him to make one of those impressive recovery drives, which he has a habit of pulling off. With an Alpine, a Haas and an AlphaTauri ahead of him, he should have gotten an easy 8th place and maybe even more. But at the end of the race, he could only manage 9th, despite Yuki Tsunoda having a terrible one-stop strategy race. It was a disappointing end to a season in which Mercedes even went as far as to drop the zero-pod philosophy and go with the more Red Bull-esque bulkier side pods in a bid to close the gap. They didn't though, leaving Hamilton concerned about what 2024 may have in store for him and Mercedes. "At this moment, I don't really know," he said when asked if his team could challenge Red Bull next season. For Red Bull to win by 17 seconds in the end, and they haven't developed their car since August, is definitely a concern. His downbeat response has 1996 world champion Damon Hill worried. "It's a long, hard year, and he'll bounce back from that," he said during the Sky F1 broadcast. But the worrying thing was when Rachel asked him about "have you got any hope about what was coming?" he was not exactly effervescent about it. Hamilton's 9th place was a very flat note to finish what hasn't been an awful season for the Brit. There has clearly been improvement, securing 3rd in the Drivers' Championship rather than the 6th place he managed last year. He's tried to drive change in the Mercedes team all season, and with the zero pods dropped, something that he seemed to want to happen, Mercedes have managed some good results, but they've come far too inconsistently. Hamilton's final 3 results of the season have been 8th, 7th and 9th place. Not exactly a high note to end on. In Abu Dhabi though, he had the chance to give Mercedes something positive to go into the winter with. Even after his poor qualifying showing, a strong race on Sunday, a performance to really seize that second place in the Constructors' Championship would have given Mercedes something to celebrate. Instead, the team couldn't rely on their star driver. They had to thank Carlos Sainz for a terrible weekend, and George Russell for a hard-fought third place. Impressively, George pulled off that result while quite badly ill. Russell admitted that he was miserable during the race in Abu Dhabi due to illness. Before the race, he shared how ill he was feeling, which must make racing around a track at 200 miles per hour a Herculean task. It's a feeling shared among the paddock, with Esteban Ocon missing media duties on Thursday because he felt unwell. The non-stop schedule at the end of the F1 season appeared to be finally taking its toll on the drivers and support staff. Speaking about how unwell he felt, Russell said, "In the car, I was coughing every single lap, but when you're strapped into the car, you can't take a deep breath in to get the cough out. It was just constantly with me, and it was pretty miserable." Russell was seen coughing away in the cool-down room after the race alongside Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. It has been a tough year for the 25-year-old who had only stood on the podium once before yesterday. He suggested it was pretty crazy that he'd only finished in the top 3 once this season ahead of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and even if he felt miserable in the car, it would have slightly lifted his spirits. Attention now turns to the winter break, and Mercedes have plenty of ground to make up on Red Bull. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff conceded the task that lay ahead was a Mount Everest to climb. It isn't just Mercedes faced with that task though. McLaren and Aston Martin have both proved they're capable of enormous leaps in performance this season, but will need improvements of a similar magnitude to regularly challenge Red Bull in 2024. Ferrari have consistently improved throughout the season and haven't had many bad upgrades. They just haven't been great either. For any of those 4 teams to challenge regularly for race wins in 2024, they're going to have the off-season of their lives, because Red Bull aren't going to sit still. Do you think Mercedes won the battle for second in the Constructors, or was it Ferrari that lost it? And do you have hope in any team to challenge Red Bull next season? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you want more F1 news and analysis, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, drive safe and bye for now.